The Middle East is blowing up. Why? Who's at the root of it all? What's it all about? And where's it going to go? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Sign up for my free newsletter and links to the guests in the description below. Hey, good morning, Harley.
Good morning. How are you?
What a world. I am good, but what a world, Harley. What a world.
Well, it's nice that it's spring so you can look outside and there's sunshine, but
yes,
I'm not sure the world is in a sunny place right now.
No, this is true. This is true. Now, you are the president of the LaRouche organization. We're going to be talking about the what's going on in the Middle East. And one thing I want to say, one of the things I've noticed, if I bring on someone on my channel who isn't like all pro-Trump 150%, then the comments can be negative, and some people will even unsubscribe and say, "I'm not listening to this anymore." Well, for everybody, I'm not interested in being an echo chamber. I'm interested in having conversations with people that are smart, intelligent, insightful, and willing to look from different angles. And you are one of those people, Harley, that I value very much. And LaRouche organization is named after Lyndon LaRouche, who set it up. He popularized the American system of political economy in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And it's out of that Promethean Action were born. And there's a separation. They're two distinct organizations right now, but they're all based on the Hamiltonian ideas of the American system of political economy. So I just want to say that, Harley. And as the president of LaRouche organization, you've been campaigning politically for many, many years.
A long time.
A long time, despite your youthful looks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we're recording this on Tuesday, the 3rd of March. It was last Friday that Israel and the United States started bombing Iran, and Iran's been retaliating ever since, attacking other Gulf nations. And the UK and the European Union have been a bit slow and hesitant to get involved. Trump's getting a lot of criticism from the Democrats. I saw something yesterday, John Bolton's worried about a deepening conflict. Has he joined the LaRouche organization, Harley? Has he applied?
We wouldn't let him in.
What is the world?
The door is closed. I'm for open dialogue, but not with someone like Bolton.
Even when he says, "Oh, I'm worried about a deepening conflict."
Well, I don't think that you can trust him, and therefore what he says is probably disingenuous and has a higher purpose to it, which is to try and trip you up. So with someone like Bolton, the best thing is to steer clear and let him live in his fantasy world.
Fine. Okay. Now, what's your take on what's going on, Harley?
Well, it really boils down to a simple thing. When Donald Trump said there is no international law, he's not going to listen to international law. Some people took that as a rejection of the globalization and the imperial schemes that have dominated politics for the last 4 or 5 decades, the so-called rules-based order. Now, you know that the LaRouche organization never accepted the idea of the rules-based order because we thought that was largely based on the idea of a City of London domination. Now, when Trump says there's no international law, the question is, what does he mean by that? And I think the problem that you have with justifying this war is that it's built on the same edifice of lies that the Iraq War was. That is the idea that Iran is about to have a nuclear weapon, when the entire intelligence establishment, defense establishment in the United States says that's not true. The International Atomic Energy Agency says it's not true. So there's an ulterior purpose here. And for that, you have to get to what is driving this. And that's the insane fantasy world of Benjamin Netanyahu. That Netanyahu insists that all potential adversaries to Greater Israel have to be weakened and incapable of resisting the emergence of a superpower of Israel. Now, Israel only exists as a nation because of the international law, the United Nations, the largesse of many countries, including the United States. But Israel does not abide by international law. And for the president of the United States, who ran for office saying he would not start a war, he would not allow regime change, he would not engage in nation building, to now participate on behalf of Netanyahu's Greater Israel Project in a war against Iran, which, look, there's no question that ultimately the US has enough military power to win this. But at what cost? And what does it mean when your negotiating posture is, let's negotiate, we'll talk, and then while the talking is going on, you're preparing for the next strike? That happened twice, in June and then this last weekend, where there were talks scheduled, the talks were going well, Iran was making concessions, and then boom. So what does that say to Russia, to China, to the rest of the world about being able to trust the United States? So those are some of the concerns that I have. And when I say that you have to abide by international law, I'm not talking about the World Trade Organization, the WEF, the IMF. I'm talking about the idea that you don't start wars for no purpose. And the purpose here is not a legitimate one. It's to extend the power of Greater Israel. And if people don't recognize that, they're missing the forest for the trees.
Okay. I can get how it does, I suppose, at one level, look like it's extending the power of Israel. Hezbollah is going to be disarmed. The Lebanese government say they're not going to tolerate Hezbollah. Iran has the supporters for Hezbollah and Hamas and their ties with the Yemeni regime, all enemies of Israel, would strengthen Israel. But Israel being attacked the way that it is, and with the US saying this is going to go on for 4 weeks, there's not going to be much Israel left. People are going to leave. The economy is going to be ruined. No one's going to, Israel, the rest of the world, Israel is losing, how can I say, is more and more regard, has less and less regard in the rest of the world.
Well, and whose fault is that?
Sorry?
Whose fault is that?
Well, that's Israel's fault. But so then how does this help Israel?
Well, that's the short-sightedness of someone like Netanyahu. When you're a delusionary fanatic who believes that you are, in a sense, Netanyahu has a racial supremacist view. And it comes not from the religion of Judaism. It comes from the culture of Zionism. And they're two different things. And if people don't understand that, they should go back and actually read the Bible. Because the Bible doesn't say you can kill your neighbor to grab his land. And you can drive your neighbor off his land if you claim it. There are such things as international law, international rules. And if you don't abide by them, don't expect others to treat you with the respect that you wish. Now, the idea that you're bringing up is how does this help Israel? It doesn't. Israel needs peace. The Israeli economy can't function with half the young population on full-time service for war. It needs a bailout. It needs other countries to pay for it. This is why the true America First movement in the United States is against this war. And I think President Trump is going to find some problems politically coming into the midterm, regardless of what happens in the outcome. And, because as I say, there's no question the United States could flatten Iran completely. So could Israel, using nuclear weapons. What do you gain by doing that? You become a rogue nation. And if the goal of Trump and Israel is to normalize relations with the Arab world, and they're cheering now because the Arab governments are supporting the war against Iran. But I tell you, the people in those governments are saying, there, but for the grace of God, could go our country. We could be the next. And so there's no peace that can come out of this kind of attack.
Okay. What about this? That this serves, the argument that this serves the purpose of the City of London in fomenting conflict in this resource-rich area of the world. Now, we're recording this on Tuesday, 3rd of March. I recorded a couple of videos yesterday with Tom Luongo and also with Alex Craner. I would say Alex Craner is closer to your position, at least when I spoke to him yesterday morning, and Tom Luongo isn't. This is an assault on the City of London, he argues. And one of the things we talked about, and I raised this, You and I have mentioned what's happening in Rwanda in a previous video we did with the African journalist P.D. Loughton, how the British are fomenting conflict by supporting both sides or several sides within the Congo. So they're fighting and fighting, and that prevents the creation of stable governments that have control over their resources, and the way that Burkina Faso does now, and is able to resist colonial extraction. So here we have a situation which parallels what's going on in Rwanda and Congo, where the British fostered Zionism, deposited these Zionist Jews, these Zionists in Israel to stoke conflict, to shit stir, and they're not gung ho about attacking Iran because they need Iran as the other group to shit stir against. You know, the jar of ants, the red ants and the black ants.
Let me take you out of the ant world and look at another factor.
Please, Harley, I want a world of peace like you.
What makes you think that defeating Iran in a war will bring peace? Look at Iraq. Look at Libya. Look at these other situations where we went in, destroyed the fabric of society, killed off the leadership, and what did we leave? We left a greater mess. What makes you think that the population in Iran, assuming their government is crushed and a new government is put in, what makes you think they're going to be willing to negotiate and be friends with Israel? I think that's where the mistake is. There is a potential for peace, and the potential is based on the idea of a win-win economic agreement. That's the LaRouche approach, that you say to Iran, look, there's nothing you can do about Israel other than fight, and you have other things that you want to do. Let's work out some kind of deal which is beneficial to both sides. That's the idea that the Chinese have with the Belt and Road Initiative. That's what the Russians are talking about when they talk about mutual security. Netanyahu is not interested in that. He's interested in supremacy. And supremacy means you rule over other peoples. This is why Israel, with all its military power, couldn't exterminate Hamas. And that's something people should think about. Israel has cameras on every single person in Gaza. They have troops that are trained and armed. They have sophisticated weaponry, and yet they haven't subdued Hamas. The only way to subdue Hamas for Israel would be to kill everyone, which is partly what their strategy was. So my point is that you don't get peace by destroying that which you oppose. And that should be a lesson from history. And it's something that Netanyahu doesn't want to hear. If you, again, look at the Middle East, the Israelis were largely responsible for arming and developing Hamas as a counter to the Palestine Liberation Organization. Look at the situation after Iraq, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. As Michael Flynn will tell you, that was a U.S. creation. As a good journalist will tell you, the Syrian government was supported entirely by the British, by the MI6 working with the Mossad. So who benefits by putting an Islamic jihadist head chopper in as president of Syria, put him in a three-piece suit, and say he's now ready for peace? This is not a peace strategy. The ultimate British plan is for perpetual warfare, and that's how they'll survive. That's the only way they'll survive. And for those who say that Trump is carrying out an anti-British plan, they haven't read the fine print on what the British plan is.
Okay, fine print.
Well, the intent.
Right.
The ultimate intent.
Perpetual war.
Yeah.
Okay, but then...
But perpetual war requires a perpetual enemy.
Yes, and my argument is that they're maintaining the Britain, because Starmer, yes, so Britain didn't take part in this in the beginning. They refused the US permission to use Diego Garcia. Then they said, yes, we'll take part, but in a defensive capacity only. And then yesterday, Starmer gave a statement in Parliament that they're not going to bomb Iran. Now, in my entire adult life, every US, UK, NATO misadventure in the Middle East, the UK has been there right from the beginning, gung ho. Not necessarily the people or the parliament, but the government. With Libya, with Iraq, with Afghanistan. Yeah, we're right in there with our American special friend buddies, killing people. We'll kill people right from the start. We'll bomb them from the skies. We'll put our troops in like they did in Iraq and Afghanistan. Here they haven't done that. And this is despite Starmer's close and extensive ties to Israel and Zionists. There was a thread that I posted on my X by a guy called Jody McIntyre, who Jody, this is my second call out to you. Please respond to my DM and come on my channel. I'd love to have a conversation with you. He does great work about exposing the corruption in the UK. And he goes through the ties that, half the cabinet in the British government are Labour friends of Israel. Here's an opportunity where these Labour friends of Israel can get in on the act and destroy Iran's biggest, baddest enemy of all. But they're not doing that because perhaps the City of London doesn't want this enemy destroyed because they want them to be around so they can foment conflict.
Well, the City of London always has 2 or 3 options. They're always, people talk about Trump playing 5D chess. The City of London invented that. The idea that we have no permanent friends, only permanent interests.
Yes.
Now, ultimately, if you invest many years of work in creating the so-called Zionist entity as a sledgehammer for imperial interests in the region, think broader, think down the road. What else is going on in this war? Who's targeted by this war? Is it Iran? Is Iran really the enemy? No, it's still Russia and China. And the Russians know this very, very well. And the fact that the United States is telling them this is not your fight, stay out of it. This is an attack on the BRICS. And someone who says they support the BRICS but supports what Trump is doing doesn't recognize that Iran is a BRICS member. There's enormous pressure on India to break India out of the BRICS. But if you look at the rest of the BRICS countries, they're completely in support of Iran. Now, what's the reason for that? Well, it has to do with resources, energy resources, but it also has to do with a balance of power. That do you really want to have one superpower dominating the world, especially a superpower that sees strength rather than law as its métier? So the City of London has several irons in the fire here, but it includes the idea that Israel does represent the constant, ongoing disruptor of peace. And how are you going to put together a peace agreement when you've just gone in and decapitated a government? Who can trust you? And especially with Netanyahu, who's using this as his main campaign issue. Trust me, I'm securing the future of Israel. How is Israel being secured by having missiles shot into it every day? So I think there's a screw loose when people say this is against the City of London. The City of London is out to maintain an imperial domination of the planet. And if the United States is the only power, they're going to do everything they can to control the policies of the United States. That doesn't mean that they're going to oppose the United States in this war. In fact, they're going to probably, in some ways, aid the U.S. with the idea that they'll be able to be in on carving up what's left in the region after it's over.
Right. But Harley, I think what you said there supports what I said, that the City of London aren't benefiting from this. This is an assault on the City of London because the City of London, the French and the British, from their perspective, not mine or yours, they should get involved in this from the start. They should attack Iran because it allows them to then be part of the movement to undermine Russia and China, and also so that BP and Total can get a share of the oil spoils from Iran. One of the reasons why NATO, Britain and France and the US destroyed Libya is to prevent Gaddafi from selling the oil to China. So how come the British aren't bombing Iran? By the
It's
way, I'm
bigger.
not saying this. NoTaxForWar.com if you're in the UK, right? Or upinarms.uk, and you can find out how you can legally, lawfully, peacefully withhold taxes in protest against war or in protest against anything that the Starmer government are doing that you disagree with. Sorry,
Well, I would say that the Starmer government has done more to cement the special relationship than it would if they sent a few of the British planes into the battle in Iran. They just had an agreement on September 17th for $1.2 trillion in contracts between British the Silicon Valley of Britain, the tech and AI sector with the Silicon Valley in the United States. That's the special relationship. Secondly, breaking apart the BRICS is the target of the City of London. And if you pay attention to what Trump keeps saying, he sees the BRICS as an enemy of the United States. And why are the BRICS an enemy? Because the BRICS are trying to develop a global economic system, which is the American system. It's investment in transportation, investment in education and healthcare. It's the idea that you have one human race that requires a constant emphasis on the advance of human creativity, as opposed to the supremacy of one outlook. And so if you go deeper into this question of what is the empire, I suggest you look at William Sargent's Battle for the Mind, I think it's called, the idea that the empire has a strategy of preventing any alternative ideas from coming forward. That's what censorship is about. That's what the whole control of the internet is about, to keep everyone targeted on who's the enemy and how do we get the enemy and why are we better than the enemy.
Okay,
and
but sorry,
war
Harley.
is not the solution, as you know from your desire to make sure that tax money doesn't go to the war economy. So you're arguing against yourself.
Oh, Harley, rumble! I am rumbled. You got me there. Okay, but again, I put it: if Britain benefits from destroying BRICS, then the British government should be involved right from the start, because then they're with the US, pulling Iran away from Russia and China.
You're not thinking like an oligarch. You have to think like an oligarch for a second. What they can now come in and say, well, you see, we didn't support the United States in this attack. And they can try and worm their way into the BRICS, which is what a lot of people think they're trying to do anyway, by saying
that'll never work. Russia and China, are you kidding? You guys
that's
are
the point.
snakes.
There's an illusion. The illusion is that Russia is weak. Just watch the various commentators. They're saying Russia's falling apart. Russia's economy is collapsing. Russia is unable to defeat Ukraine. Why should we be scared of Russia? They think Russia's collapsing. They think China is having an internal struggle for power and it's collapsing. These are the illusions that are created by people like John Bolton, who now may be speaking against the illusions that he created. But that's the whole point. It's called psychological warfare. And the idea that because London is not immediately involved in the bombing, that it doesn't support what Trump is doing is kind of silly, because the British always operate on 2 or 3 different levels, and they're looking down the road. So they know something's going to come out of this, and they want to be positioned so they can benefit from whoever wins and whichever side triumphs. That's the strategy of Chatham House.
Okay.
And by the way, the longer range point, it's against Russia. The idea of breaking apart Russia's relationship with Eurasia. That's where the real strategic wealth is. Iran has oil, but at some point oil is going to be last year's wealth. The future is in strategic metals, in the raw materials that are in Siberia, that are in Mongolia, that are in Afghanistan. That's what the bigger great game is about. How do you grab onto that? And ultimately, the strategy goes back to the idea of breaking apart Russia. And so if you defeat a Russian ally, and assuming Iran is a Russian ally, then you create a further basis and you continue the war in Ukraine. Because look, Starmer is not backing off from continuing the war in Ukraine, is he?
No, but then that undermines the suggestion that you made that that somehow the UK will be allowed to join BRICS, wants to join BRICS, and that's why they're holding back. Because on the western flank, they're out to attack Russia. So
well, they're also trying to get into the European Union again.
Yeah. Oh God, no, please.
No, I mean, you look at what just happened in the recent election, the by-election in Manchester. The Greens come in first. Labor barely gets a quarter of the vote. You know, there's and the idea that somehow the dumping of former Prince Andrew is a way of attacking the British system. It's an internal fight going on there. Prince Andrew's usefulness was long gone.
Okay, Harley, we'll go to it. We'll have a separate conversation about the UK and also about Epstein and what's happening there. You mentioned Afghanistan and Pakistan. What's your take on why that blew up and what's happening there?
Well, I think the problem is that Afghanistan has not been given the capacity to rebuild that was part of the promise to it. And there's a terrible crisis in Afghanistan. They have no reserve currency. Their crops were not so good this year. They weren't as much involved in selling opium to the world, so their internal economy is hurt. And you have, in a sense, an easy pickings. You can provoke a crisis very easily between Pakistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, India. It's a region like the Middle East. There's a boiling cauldron underneath it. So it's not too difficult to create those kinds of tensions. I think this is a war that people should pay attention to because it has the capability of major disruptions of the world economy, just as the Iran situation can disrupt the world economy. I would add one other thing to think about on this. The closing of the Strait of Hormuz, what will the result of that be? I think people around Trump are telling him, now you'll see why we took over the Venezuelan oil.
Okay. Now, I looked on marinetraffic.com, which gives live traffic info on shipping, moment by moment with all the transponders. And the Strait of Hormuz is not closed. There are ships passing through.
Yeah, it's not closed yet.
Okay, not closed yet. Yes. Okay.
Well, that's an option. That's something they're keeping open. And maybe they won't be able to do it. Maybe that they have been decapitated enough that they can't control their forces in the way they want. On the other hand, it's a pretty big risk to take.
Yeah.
And oil prices did go skyrocketing yesterday.
Okay. All right. Harley, I love talking to you. I learned so much from you. And what I appreciate is how gracious and also like you've got a rod of steel that holds you up. Because whatever I throw at you, just very calmly pushing it back. No, what about this? And thank you so much. I so appreciate this. And I look forward to having you back on again. And
okay.
We shall speak soon.
It's always good to share ideas with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is Rich and Harley signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.